Okay, so yesterday we were halfway through the long commentary which Sri Madhusudana Saraswati was giving on the verse number 28. In the verse number 28 is Junjan Eva Sadatmanam Yogi Vigata Kalmasaha Sukhena Brahma Sansparsam Atyantam Sukhamasmite. He is saying that it's very easy for that person who is Prasanta Manasayenam Yoginam Sugamuttamam, earlier verse, the 27th verse had mentioned that a person who has a quiet mind and he has Upashama, he's kind of has overcome all the hurdles and the challenges in disciplining his mind. He has a kind of harmony in his mind. That sort of a person, this, you know, who is completely free from the entanglements posed by rajas, which is dukhatmaka, which causes a lot of misery, stress, and strain on the mind, and his brahmabhutam, akalmasam, that particular sukha, which is free from any stains, any limitations, any restrictions, this kind of reaches, it appears. Anayasana praptam, without any effort, this is experienced by the person who is into meditation. That means he has already completed a lot of hard work and he is at the pinnacle of his sadhana. And this sort of happens to him. He doesn't anymore wander around. He doesn't run around, chase different gurus, texts, pilgrimages. No, he's just sitting in a deep state of meditation. Whatever he had been searching for sort of materializes, not in material form. Materializes in the sense it becomes upalabdha, it becomes achieved. He gets it. And he gets it by meditating, yunjaneva, through this particular chintana and vichara and the meditation, sadatmanam, meditating on the self. And that yogi who is bigada kalmashaha, free from all kinds of papas and sins, sukhena, without much effort, brahma sansparshan. We have discussed that yesterday. Yeah, he gets that tadatmya. He doesn't see himself anymore as different from that pure consciousness. That tattvamashyadi vakya janya jnana, or a jnana nibriti resulting in jnana, happens to him without much hassle anymore. Sukhamasmate, that particular atyantika sukha, all the kinds of happinesses that we try to get through food and shelter and a good car and a lot of material things, which are kind of very temporary, and yes, even though they are long term, that not necessarily truly liberating, because after getting these so-called pleasures and happinesses, we are still stuck somewhere and we have a feeling of insufficiency because there is more of it still left to be attained. You become a billionaire, there's somebody who has a couple of billions. You get a couple of billions, there's somebody who is more with him. Does it mean you shouldn't look at them? No. I mean, for your sadhana, if you're living a normal material life, yes, some of it is important, and you have to pay attention. You have to see to it that your family and others are kind of not suffering. But at the same time, if you are a sarva karma sannyasi, you have ascended to a very high level of meditation. You want to sort of get dissolved in that pure consciousness, then you have to get rid of all the kinds of problems which separate you from that higher level of consciousness. And we discussed that yesterday. What are those? These are the 9 antarayas, right? The obstructions, the hurdles. What are they? Vyadhi, sthana, sansaya. Vyadhi is all kinds of diseases that you have. Then sthana, akarmanyata, sansaya, ubhayakoti, that doubt. Pramada, you don't want to do it. Alasya, because of physical heaviness. Avirati, inability to, it's kind of addiction, inability to hold yourself back from the external objects. Bhranti darsana, a faulty understanding, being on the wrong path. And alabdha, bhumikatvam. And alabdha darsana, alabdha bhumikatvam. And anavastatvam. So now alabdha bhumikatvam, and you are finding it. Actually, it should be analabdha bhumikatvam. So you are unable to get inability to meditate and get that quietude in your mind. That is a difficulty that come whatever may, you are trying to meditate, it doesn't happen with you. It's quite possible on certain days. that you want to study Bhagavad Gita or you want to read it, you want to do a bit of meditation, you will find on some certain days your meditation absolutely doesn't materialize. Come whatever may, you may make a lot of efforts, but you sort of find yourself failing in it. Okay, so that's the kind of inability to sort of reach that samadhi sthana. And then he mentions finally what is the anavastititvam. Like when you reach that thing, it's like get a job, you can't hold it. You get a privilege, but you do not know how to maintain it. You sort of waste that opportunity. That samadhi. Alabdha bhumikatvam. I was just reading is alabdha bhumikatvam. Difficulty in getting it. And then, because that is alavaha, chipta mudha, vikshipta rupatvam iti. Because of the mind, which is either kshipta, which is distracted, mudha, the kind of completely tamasika or vikshipta, sattvika, but temporarily focused on one subject, then it goes to another subject. It's like a good professional, multitasking, And anavastitatvam, labdhayam api samadhi bhumo prayatna, saithilyat chittasya tatra apratishthitattvam. So you reach there with a lot of effort, but you sort of relax after you reach that samadhi in the meditation. You kind of become a little laid back and then you lose it. Okay, we had discussed this 9 kinds of problems. These are the hurdles. And then he mentions that when you have any of these, you also have another 5. When you have vikshepa, when you have the mind running around, you have distractions affecting your consciousness, you also have another 5 or 6. What are they? Dukkha. And we discussed that yesterday. Dukkha or pain or frustration or whatever way you describe it, misery. It can be adhyatmika, adhibhautika, adhidaivika. 3 kinds of dukkhas, 3 tapas. And he explains each one. And let's read and make sense of it. And we'll finish this sloka and the long commentary in it today. So he says, Tacha adhyatmikam sariram manasam cha vyadhi vasad kamadi vasad cha bhavati. So, dukkham chittasya rajasah parinamo badhana lakshanaha. Why you have dukkha? Because these are modifications of the rajas tattva in you. This rajas is one of the gunas, the 3 gunas. The rajasic thing is creating stress. So just imagine you are sitting in the aircraft, is about to take off, and it's a little warm because they are trying to cut down on energy, so they haven't started the air conditioning. Maybe it's the month of February or March, and they think that we're going to be airborne in a few minutes. And once you go high up, where outside temperature is about minus 36 or 35, then inside anyways it cools down. Okay, so they don't have to exert a lot of energy, waste a lot of energy to cool you down. Then suddenly you get very agitated because of rajasic thing. You are restless, you are tense, you are reading a mail by your boss and you're trying to respond to it before the flight takes off. It must have happened to many of you. It has happened to me. And you're stressed out because you want to somehow shoot the mail. And before the plane takes off, because you have to switch off your computer or laptop or iPad or whatever. And then you find that it's a little hot and you are very agitated. You begin to sweat and you call the air hostess and complain. What is this? This is a modification of the rajas, the dukkhatmaka, stress, pain, anger, frustration. If you pick up any Buddhist book to figure out why depression happens, I have read quite a bit of material on that. You know what they mention? It's essentially at the bottom of all our depression is selfishness and narcissism, obsession with oneself. I want to be good. I want to be superior. I want to be on the top. And that is what sort of modifies and materializes this depression in us. If you can be a little relaxed, accept the way the mind functions, understand it, then we can be happier. That's what is dukkha. And he explains 3 kinds of dukkhas. Tacha adhyatmikam shariram. Adhyatmika is what you experience in your body consciousness, manasam cha, or in the mind. So broadly, the physical consciousness. Vyadhi vasad kamadi vasacha. Either because of some disease, you may be having some strain, you have a headache, or you are having delirious experiences because of high temperature. It's quite possible, isn't it? You feel very helpless and you are angry and sort of because you are vomiting and there is loose motion. These things happen. And then sometimes because of kamadi vasacha, because you have a certain desire or craving for something, you aren't getting it, you are denied that, and therefore the stress levels are very high. Adi bhautikim vyagradi janitam. What is adi bhautika? Bhautika is the external material reality which is causing the pain to you. Adi bhautika can be that suddenly a wild animal attacks you, or anything, something like this, extreme heat or cold. You got terribly drenched in heavy rain, right? These are all adi bhautika. And then what? Adhidaivikam graha pidadi janitam, because he's bringing in a bit of an element of superstition or theistic belief in the unknown phenomena, which are having some influence on the known phenomena or what you can see it directly. So the Hindu astrology sort of believes that the planets and stars have some influence on the way you get results. Okay, that is what they say. Of course, the universal law of gravitation is there, and obviously all the celestial beings, physical or non-physical, whether you're a Hindu or not, obviously you are all in different gravitational fields. There is no denying this. But how they influence us, the science hasn't reached there. But they're saying that Adhidaivika is because of certain spiritual factors when you suffer. Now, you are a rational person. By Adhidaivika, you can take certain sudden onset of a calamity is Adhidaivika, because there is no control over that particular fact, like a sudden cyclone, or maybe there is a lightning or something, right? These are things which a lot of people suffer, they cannot control it. That's one way to avoid providing an explanation which might sort of tempt people to point fingers at you saying you are very superstitious. Let's stop there. Janitam dvesakhya viparjya hetutvat samadhi virodhi. And all these, Adidaivika, Adibhautika, and Adhyatmika, this dukkha creates in you what? It creates dvesa. You hate that situation. You want to get out of that situation. And therefore, viparjya hetutvat. And we have faulty understanding. Why am I suffering? Because of this guy or because of that act, right? And these are samadhi virodhis. You get agitated, you lose the peace of mind, you cannot do meditations. Dormanasya, dukkha, dormanasya, and what is dormanasya? Ichha, dormanasyam, ichha vighatat, ichha vighatadi balavat dukkha anubhava janita chittasya tamasah parinama visheshaha Shobha paraparyayah stabdivhavah. Dormanasya, you're kind of pensive and stressful and desperate and despondent or whatever way. There is a set of negative thoughts which are clouding your mind. Okay, why that happens? You wanted something, and despite your best efforts, as I was discussing yesterday, the contrary thing happens. And you are utterly frustrated, you don't want to do anything, you sit quiet, you think I don't want to do it. Stabdi bhava. And like for example, you reach the airport with a lot of problem, and about to then he's saying, okay, the check-in thing has stopped, and it's about to take off, and we cannot board you again. I'm sorry, you have to wait for the next flight. You feel utterly frustrated. What happens is that particular dukkha that you experience, tamasa parinama visheshaha, then suddenly there is a lull in your mind. You absolutely don't feel like doing anything. You got a rejection letter because of a business deal or in a relationship. The mind doesn't do anything. For some time, it's just dumb. And that kind of stabdi bhava, stops functioning. It's bewildered. It's nirveda. And therefore, in that sense, Sautupasayatvat layavat samadhi virodhihi. And we have discussed all that earlier, right? So Vikshepa and Mudha, all these are, samadhi virodhi. Nidra is also samadhi virodhi. Then he mentions there is a state called kasaya between this vikshipta state, mudha state, and other states. There is a nidra state. There is a state where there is no laya, no vikshepa. Laya means sleep. Vikshepa means other four vrittis. What? Pramana, viparjya, vikalpa, and smriti. These are also functions of the mind. But in between, there's a moment where you just are quiet, and you that's not samadhi. You are sabdi bhava parna. That is not samadhi. You're just kind of dumb for a while. There's a refusal to think or do anything. That's highly tamasic, and that is absolutely not samadhi. Okay, a person has a nervous breakdown, it doesn't know what to do. When you have a nervous breakdown, okay, the whole body doesn't respond, the mind doesn't respond. You just have to sort of allow it to relax, and of course doctors will help you deal with it whenever it happens to anyone. But that's how sort of it happens. So the kasayatvat layavat samadhi virodhi, the way sleep is also against meditation, is stabdi bhava, depression, or deep depression or dullness is also against samadhi. Angamejatvam. What is angamejatvam? It's like kampana. Angamejatvam, what is it? Anga kampanam. So it's basically trembling of your body. Kampanam, and then how is it contrary to what you are trying to do in samadhi? Asana starya virodhi. You have to have yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, right? You want to have yama. You have discipline yourself. The niyama, you are doing discipline. You have sanyamata. Then you have asana. You will do those physical postures. Then you will do pranayama. But when you are sitting to do asana, what happens is your legs feel very uncomfortable. So you keep changing them. You cannot sit in a particular posture, or your head cannot be erect. So these are anga mejatvam, and they are asana starya virodhi. You cannot have sthirata, that stability of the physical posture, and that also is kind of counterproductive in meditation. Pranena vahyasya vayor amta praveshanam swasa samadhishu samadhi anga rechaka virodhi. So, these pranayama, if you see that as a particular aspect, a component of the whole process, a technology of samadhi, you have what? Rechaka, puraka, and kumbhaka. Rechaka is flushing out the air in a very steady, balanced way, according to the advice of whosoever is your guru in the pranayama vidya. Puraka is inhaling slowly and steadily, and kumbhaka is holding that air inside. There is bahi kumbhaka, when you hold your breath, when you have flushed out the air for a while. And there are different proportions in which you are supposed to do it under the guidance of somebody, so that you don't commit any error, okay? Because they can lead to some sort of physical problems, as they say. Minor pranayama doesn't cause any problem, and you can do it. A simple thing like just inhale and exhale kind of thing. Now, pranena vahyasya vayu. Now, when you are actually doing rechaka, like you're slowly exhaling, and there is a kind of vikshepa, distraction in the mind, and suddenly you remember that you're supposed to send an SMS, or supposed to call your sister because it's her birthday, and you're sitting to do meditation. What happens to you? You leave you're supposed to flush out the air, but in a fit of tension, you inhale it, and then you are actually breathing that particular discipline. You are doing that breathing exercise. Is kind of interrupted. Pranena Ushtyasya Vayor Vahid Nisharanam Praswasa Samadhi Anga Puraka Virodhi. And then similarly, when you are supposed to inhale this whole thing, you remember a particular debate competition when you were in school and you had given a very good speech, but towards the end of it, they had alerted you that you should not exceed the time limit. But you kind of forgot it. You spoke for 2 minutes extra, and you spoke very well. They disqualified you. But you were the best speaker, everybody clapped for your speech, but you were disqualified. And you just leave a deep sigh because you remember that pain As a young boy, you hadn't got that prize. And when you have the shy, what are you doing? You're disturbing, interrupting this whole scientific way of inhaling air, because that is one part of your pranayama, which is again part of the whole samadhi exercise. That is how it's swasa and prashwasa. They also become samahita chittasya ete na bhavanti. And when you are samadhi prapta samahita, you are tranquil, you are in a state of tranquility, you are in a state of inner balance, then these sort of disturbances or interruptions shall not trouble you. Vikshepa Vikshipta chittasya eva bhavanti iti vikshepa saha bhuvo antaraya eva. And because these 5-6 things are generally concomitant or happen at the same time, when your mind is distracted, what are they? Dukkha. Number 2, Daurmanasya, Angamejatva, and then you have Swasa and Praswasa. These sort of things are something they accompany a vikshipta state of mind, a distracted state of mind, trying to meditate and reach samadhi. And therefore, be careful about the 9 obstructions. In addition to that, keep in mind that if you at all allow your mind some kind of distraction, you would relax a little, then you will also have another additional 5 enemies. So in total, you have 14 enemies to deal with. Okay? Then he says, now I have to take you back to Patanjali Yoga Sutra, because suddenly he's going to the next sloka talking about Ishvara Pranidhanadva. Okay. Now what he's saying, Ete Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam Nirodhabhyaha. And all these disturbances, all these interruptions or enemies who might try to attack you when you are doing meditation, how do you fight them off? How do you overcome them? How do you keep them at bay? Okay, he's saying Abhyasa and Vairagya. Vairagya, we have discussed a lot about it, the whole science of detaching your mind. And Abhyasa is again and again doing that particular thing and repeating it, to familiarize yourself with how that happens and understanding the nitty-gritties of it, and efficiently, skillfully, and mindfully executing it to gain perfection in the whole practice of yoga. Okay? Ishvara Pranidhanena Va. Now, before I go to that Ishvara Pranidhana Va, that particular sutra, which is the 24th sutra of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra in the Samadhi Pada, which is the first chapter, I need to sort of remind you again about different categories of meditation. You know that you have Vitarka, Vichara, Ananda, Asmita. So what you have? Savitarka, Nirvitarka, where you have Jnana, and when you have Artha and Guna together, when you're remembering, like you are meditating on Lord Shiva or Shivalingam or Lord Krishna, and then you have that Madhurya Bhava of Lord Krishna. And you listen to a few songs of it and you think about Meera and you're meditating. Savitaraka. Then there is a time only you're meditating on Krishna, nothing appears. The whole quality then is because nothing. It's only Arthamatra. That is what appears. That is Nirvitarka. Similarly, Savichara. The sukshma things, the subtle objects you are meditating on. That was Thula, this is Sukshma. And you are meditating on them. Again, with these particular things, if you add the Jnana and the Guna and other things, that is Sa-Vichara. And then you dump everything, just Arthamatra Pratibhasa happens in your mind, that becomes Nirvichara. And then when you cross that Nirvichara of Sananda and Sasmita, meditation, Grahana Samapatti, meditation on the Indriyas, the gates through which the Vishayas, the external objects, enter your mind, or the consciousness when it focuses on the ego principle, on yourself, it meditates on the self. Who is that grahitra? You are doing all grahanas, right? So you are sort of, this is a meditation which is outside in. You're withdrawing your mind from the outside, from Sthula, it comes to Sukshma, then it comes to the whole process of meditating, Grahana Samapatti. Then who is the Grahita? Who is receiving this? Who is meditating? You meditate on that. That is Sananda. That's what then you have this Ritamara Pragya, and then there are certain intermediate states, and then there's a mention about Dharma Megha Samadhi. And because he sort of is not attached to the benefits, like you have Adhyatma Prasada, lot of benefits, lot of siddhis, but the yogi dumps them all, then he goes. Then he mentions that there is Sampragyata Samadhi. But when you overcome the Sampragyata Samadhi, because it is Dheya Sapeksha, it is dependent on a particular object of concentration. That is why it is in the Ekagrata Bhumi. From the Sampragyata Samadhi, when the mind further ascends through a process called Paravairagya, and then it reaches that ultimate level, what is called Asampragyata Samadhi. There is only pure consciousness, and there is Viveka Khyati, a clear distinction between Purusha and Prakriti, and therefore it's no more attached to anything that it experiences, and it becomes clearer and becomes more and more aware of how the Purusha is different from Prakriti, how the pure consciousness is transcending everything else, where it appears to be present and trapped. So you are in the body, but you realize, I'm not this body, I'm not man or a woman, and you try to see the pure consciousness. And once you see that, you are liberated as per the Sankhya and the Yoga Parampara. Here, what happens is the Asampragyata Samadhi is again categorized. So Sampragyata Samadhi is categorized into four, right? Vitarka, Vichara, Sananda, Sasmita. Right? These are four categories. Now, Asampragyata Samadhi is again categorized into two kinds, Bhava Pratyaya and Upaya Pratyaya. So Bhava Pratyaya is what is again slightly inferior. It sort of doesn't take you to the ultimate self-realization, whereas Upaya Pratyaya is far superior, far subtler in the content, in the quality. It's called Upaya Pratyaya. That particular Upaya Pratyaya, it's a little tiring, so you have to just listen to it. Then you can read the Yoga Sutras, and it will be easier. As I told you, the easiest book to deal with is Swami Vivekananda's commentary, which is the easiest one, but there are other good books to read as well. Now, when you are in that Asampragyata Samadhi, it's pure theoretical knowledge at this moment. So you just have to listen and grasp these words. What does it say? This Upaya Pratyaya, again you have Mridu, Madhya, Adhimatra, Upaya Pratyaya. So these are three. Mridu, which is soft or light. Madhya, which is mildly or moderately intense. Adhimatra, which is only pure consciousness. That means what? It's the subtlest. So you have light, moderately intense, and very intense means very, very sensitive, very, very subtle, very transparent, Adhimatra. Now, these three, again, he will break them, each of them, into three. This Upaya Pratyaya, again, he'll break them into three, each of them. So, Mridu Sambhega, Madhya Sambhega, and Tibra Sambhega. This Tibra Sambhega, he adds Mridu Sambhega, Madhya Sambhega, and Tibra Sambhega. That is how he's saying. And where you have that Adhimatra Tibra Sambhega, that is the highest level. You're that sharp, that you're like the vector which is traveling at a very fast pace, like light, to its destination. The consciousness is fast approaching its real nature through this meditation. It's Tibra Sambheganam Asannaha. That is the sutra. So he says that when you are meditating, there comes a moment that Adhimatra Tibra Sambheganam Asannaha. It's very easy for them to reach that ultimate level of Kaivalya Prapti. Then Patanjali twists everything and says, Ishvara Pranidhanatva. You can do all that science, try on your own, and you will reach there. It's a harder, longer path. Then suddenly he says, but there's another path which is perhaps easier, but are you ready? And do you know what it requires? You have to surrender everything that we have talked about so far, your indriyas, your mana, your ahankara, your buddhi, and your, everything at the feet of the Lord, Ishvara, Ishvara Pranidhana Dva, through complete surrender to the divine. You can also reach that. Doesn't mean you will not do asana pranayama, you will do everything. We are talking about the penultimate stage where you have to break through and get that escape velocity to travel. It's a self-propelled vehicle. But to be that, you need grace of God. That's what he says. Ishvara pranidhana dva. That means even without looking for grace of God, without the surrender, you can also reach there. With purushartha, on your own hard work, you can be there. There's not a problem. However, Ishvara pranidhanadva. He has brought it, and then if you brought that particular word, you see how scientifically Patanjali Yoga Sutra is very scientifically organized. The moment he introduced the word Ishvara pranidhanadva, Patanjali is very, very accountable to his students. He has to now explain who is this Ishvara. Is it Lord Krishna? Is it Lord Shiva? Is it Buddha? Or is it Allah or Jesus? Who is he? Then he has a definition of who is that Ishvara, and we are reading that. Okay, so Ishvara pranidhanena va tibra sambeganam asanne. That is the sutra. That is 23rd sutra. Tibra sambeganam asannaha. Tibra sambeganam asanne samadhi lave prastuta. Ishvara pranidhanadva iti pakshantaram uktva. Pranidheyam Ishwaram, that particular Ishvara where you will surrender, having mentioned that sutra, who is Pranidheya, the one to whom you surrender, he gives you another sutra. What is that sloka? That sutra, which is a definition of Ishvara. It's a beautiful definition of Ishvara. Klesha karma vipaka asayer aparamrishtaha purusha vishesha Ishvaraha. Look, he's saying Ishvara is a Purusha, is like a human being. Is it? No. Let's look at the meaning of it. Klesa. What is Klesa? Aparamrishta is unconnected, not touched by it. Aparamrishta. Then, which means Ishvara is a Purusha Vishesha. Ishvara represents a certain consciousness, a special consciousness, and that special consciousness is free from a few limitations, a few restrictions, a few deficiencies. What are these deficiencies? And he explains. Number one, klesha. What is klesha? Avidyadi. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, avinivesha. These are the kleshas that all we human beings and other animals are subjected to. What is avidya? Ignorance. Asmita, I am this, I am that, I know that, ahankara. Raga, attachment. Dvesha, aversion. Avinivesha, attachment, terrible attachment and fear of death. Clinging, that is avinivesha. So these are the five kleshas, pancha klesha, that we experience. And what is saying? Yabritti, is separation. So what is God? He's having a particular definition in which he's saying, God is not these. That is God. Who is God? God, one who is not touched by these is God. Number one is klesha, removed. Then what? Karma. He doesn't do kushala, akushala, good work, bad work, papa, punya. He's above that. He doesn't do any karma. Why? He's not a karta. Purusha Vishesha. That is that Purusha Vishesha, that Shuddha Chaitanya Vishesha, is neither karta nor bhokta. He's free from all this. He's not karta. And therefore what? There is no karma is there. He's free from all karmas. He's not doing anything. Next, Vipaka. What is Vipaka? Maturity. Vipaka is fructification of the karmas you do, karma phalas. Because he is not doing any karma, he is not subjected to enjoying or suffering any fallouts, any outcomes of the karmas, which we attribute to him. He's not doing anything. We might attribute things to him. That is the bad part of it at our end of consciousness. We attribute things to God. Why should he do it to us? Now look at the definition. He is free from, aparamrishta, from what? Vipaka. Then finally, asai. Asaya. What is asaya? Where you have this karma and karma phala, everything, they actually wed with the state desire in vasanas. He's also not touched by vasana. Why should God do this? We ask. We are stupid. God absolutely doesn't desire to do anything because he's again not touched by asaya, vasana. Aparamrishtaha purusha visheshaha ishvara. So klesa karma vipaka asair klesa karma vipaka asair apramrishtaha purusha vishesha ishvaraha. Now we know this. Now somebody might ask you, a Vedantist or a yogi, a serious yogi, like we have heard about a lot of people who ascended to a very high level, can we call them God? A lot of people worship other human beings as God. Now, as per this whole Yoga Sutras, do you know who is Ishvara? Who is Aparamrishta Purusha Visheshaha? Now, there will be no um, Karya Upadhi or Karana Upadhi. What is Karya Upadhi? Karya Upadhi is Jiva. We are products of that particular thing. We are Karya Upadhis. Karana Upadhi is Ishvara. Because that is again a superimposition. He is the cause of this universe. We are the products of that process of creation. And therefore, we have the title as Srushti. And he has the title as Srasta. So, Karana Upadhi Ishvara, Karya Upadhi Jiva. Having said that, this Ishvara that we are talking about is saying that Karma Klesa Vipaka Asaya Aparamnishtaha Purusha Visheshaha. Now, is the Atmagyani who did a lot of studies, who took sannyasa, did a lot of studies or did a lot of yoga and got enlightenment, can you say him God? Because he is Klesa Karma Vipaka Asaya Aparamnishtaha. There is a Atmagyana. Can you call him Ishvara? No. Why? Because when you said Purusha Visheshaha, you are basically mentioning that a person who never had any connection with this karma, klesa, karma, vipaka, asaya. He never had any connection. But the Jnani had a connection. When he was born, he cried. He was born out of the mother. He cried for milk. He wanted mothers to kiss him, take care of him. So he was like any other human being. And then Prakriti Laya. Then you know those people who sort of do a meditation, then you go. But then what happens is that after they reach that ultimate level, but after some time, when there is another creation, they come back and become animals or human beings or whatever, because they are not fully liberated. They are called Prakriti Layas. That means you reach a very high level, then you fall from there because you haven't got Atmajnana. Will you call me Ishvara? No. He is now in the level of a very heavenly existence, not touched by any of this, but he is going to be touched by all this. So he cannot be Ishvara. So now Purva Bhavi, now Purva, now Bhavi is free from any kind of connectivity either before or after. That means he's Nitya Aparamnishta. That is what you have to keep in mind. A lot of people sort of look at Lord Buddha as Bhagavan, or a lot of human beings to become gurus and all. They kind of say that he's Supreme God, Supreme Mother. But look at what Yoga Sutras say, that he has to be Nitya Paramrishta. Then who is he? They will talk about someone like Kapila, who has written the Sankhya Sutras. Because they see him, Kapila in Bhagavad Gita says that I am Kapila. Doesn't he say that? He has. And that Kapila Muni who wrote the Sankhya Sutras, he absolutely had no interest. He came here to take a human form to tell you the truth as to how you can get liberated. And he was the first creative thinker in Indian parampara who took our attention away from the Vedic karma kandas towards jnana, gave a philosophical twist to the Vedic interpretations, didn't he? And therefore, he sort of is seen as Ishvara here. We have done this. Now there are two more definitions, which are corollaries of what we discussed right now, which I mentioned. One is Tatra Niratisayam Sarvagya Vijam. That particular Ishvara is one where there is that jnana. How much you know. That jnana has parakasta, kasta prakti. That ultimate thing is realized in him. And therefore, Tatra Niratisayam Sarvagya Vijam. You know that there is nothing beyond what he knows. He knows everything. Niratisayam. There's nothing beyond what can be known. So he's completely surviving in the fullest sense of the term. Sa purvesam api guruhu kalena anavacheda. So, about Brahman, you remember we have been mentioning that particular 2-3 adjectives we always give. Desa, Kala, Vastu, or Parichinna. Desa. Brahman is everywhere. It's not Desa Parichinna. It is not restricted or defined or delimited by space, that it is from this coordinate to that coordinate. No. It is not Desa Parichinna. Parichinna means what? Separated, secluded, limited in that sense. Then Kala Parichinna, that from this particular year to this particular year, God will be there. No. That's one of the reasons why when you talk about Brahman, all the so-called avatars, whether it's Rama or Krishna or Allah or Jesus or anything, without disrespect to anyone, please understand that Parameshwara can assume different forms. That Parameshwara has no name and form. If he has, he's not Parameshwara because he's Kala Parichinna. He has a certain period of history attributed to him. So his existence becomes limited. Then Bastu Parichina, there is no second. If he's a pencil, you can have a pen. If he's a paper, you can have a pencil or you have an eraser or whatever. But he's that particular Bastu, you do not, he's Advitya. There is no second. And therefore, he is Desa Kala Bastu Paricheda Sunyam, or Desa Kala Bastu Aparichinna. That is Brahman. That is how we define it. Now he is clarifying that again, that Sa Purvesham Api Guruhu. All the great authors, thinkers, and acharyas and yogis who have been there even before, you go millions of years. Whosoever was there, even of him, he is Guru. He is actually the Guru of that guy. How? Kalena Anavacheda, because he's not limited by time. He was always there. So you bring in any great soul or realized person, he will remain the Guru of that person. Okay? Iti trivi sutrehi pratipadya tat pranidhanam dvabhyam aswat sutrayat dvabhyam. So, he brings it, another two sutras, that is sutra number 27 and 28 of the first chapter, to explain how to do that pranidhana. How do you do it? Now you want to say, Ishvara pranidhana, I'll surrender to the Lord. Does it mean you will do Mahamantra? Does it mean you will dance or sit or cry or break coconuts? What do you do? Or give garlands, flower garlands, or big temples you build? What do you do? That's defined. First, you have to define that pranidhana there, because he is kind of so unlimited. How do you reach him? Okay, through symbolism. You have to use some pratika, some symbol, to sort of connect with him, because he's not available to your eyes. Tasya vachakaha pranavaha. That is the most important sutra there. Ishwarasya vachakaha pranavaha. What is vachaka? There's a relationship called vachya and a vachaka. Now, you just look at this pencil. What is the vachya? This is the pencil. This is vachya. I'm saying this is a pencil. This is the vachaka. That sabda is the vachaka. This is the vachya. The vastu is the vachya. So, through the word, what we have is vachya vachaka sambandha. It's that as simple as that in linguistics or in basic language. Okay? Tasya vachakaha pranavaha. Why? God cannot be, Ishvara cannot be described in words. And therefore, that pranava mantra, and what is pranava? Om. What is that Om? Let's make sense of it. There are different ways in which the word Om has been explained in different Upanishads. One of them, the Mundaka Upanishad, the Mandukya Upanishad, there's a long debate on what is O, U, Mo, and that is Vishwa, Taijasa, and Pragya, or Jagrata, Swapna, and Susupti, that Om, and there is a Turyavastha, where you get liberated, and there's a long discussion on that. We have done a little of it when we did Tattvabodha, Atmabodha. Now, Prakarshena nuyate stuyate anena iti nauti stauti iti va pranavaha onkaraha. That is what is written in commentary on the Yoga Sutras by Bhoja. It's called Bhoja Vritti. And there is another way in which it's explained, Avati iti Om. Avati means what? Avarakshani. It protects, and therefore it's called Om. Om protects you, avarakshane. So what is the dhatu out of which this Om is created? Is created out of that dhatu called avarakshane. So it protects, because it's Lord of the universe, it protects you. He has no name. We are saying, oh, it's just a symbol to present him to your consciousness. There are no other ways. In fact, it's very close to what the Christians say or Muslims say, Amen. It's very close, isn't it? So it's very interesting that I was talking to someone from Romania, and the person told me that there are certain places in Romania where they say hello to each other and they say Om. Incidentally, even in ancient India, even now monks, when they see each other, they just say Om, so it's there. So it's there in different cultures, but we need more historical research to establish a lot of things which are otherwise presented as religious beliefs. We do not know how far we can overstress the interpretation, but this is what the Shastra says, that Om essentially means it's constructed out of that etymological root, dhatu root called avarakshane, and then you make sense of it. Okay, Om, tasya vachakaha pranavaha. And then this Ishvara, that Ishvara is the Vachya, that is the Vastu, the Padartha. You say Om, then what do you do? Tad japaha, tad tadartha bhavanam. That is your pranidhana. How do you surrender to God? Tad japaha. You chant that. So the monks are supposed to chant Om 12,000 times a day. That's the minimum. And say, of course you can. So you just can say Om, Om. That's kind of meditation. And like, for example, in Ajapa Gayatri, so you inhale so hum. So so the Om Hang Saha. So it's essentially you're inhaling, and then top this Om, and then hum, then Cha, then goes on. That is the Hangsa. It's essentially Pranayama. We say that uska Hangsa ud gaya. The bird flew away. No. Hangsa ud gaya means the breathing stopped in a certain way. The consciousness left his body. Okay. Now coming here. Tad japaha tadartha bhavanam. What is artha? Now this is the sabda, right? There is sabda like the pencil. What is the artha of the sabda? What is the sabdartha? This thing. That is the artha. Artha is the object. Sabda is that word which is describing. So saktam padam. Sakti. What is the sakti? Which is there in the word. And sakti is what sort of connects. And this is sakya. It has that potential. And it is expressed to the word. And that is sakta. So sakti is that meaning which is represented by the word, and sakyam, which can give you meaning, is the significant, as they say. Word is a sign in linguistics. This is the significant, signifier, as they say. The significant, this is the signifier, this is the sign. Okay, so this is how these are connected. So tasya vachakaha pranavaha tad japaha tadartha bhavanam. What is tad artha? Om artha bhavanam. What is the artha of that pranava? You meditate on that by reading Mandukya Upanishad, by reading Bhagavad Gita. You meditate on the meaning of Om, of Ishvara. Then we are then tataha pratyek chetana adhigamo api antaraya bhavasya. If you succeed in doing this, then what happens? You are blessed with removal of all the obstructions. All the antarayas that we discussed, you remember just a moment, 9 obstructions, another 5. Okay, and what are them? Just quickly, you remember. So vyadhistyana sansaya pramada, alasya avirati bhranti darsana, alabdha bhumikatva anavastitatvani chitta vikshepas te antarayaha. That is what we have mentioned. Dukha dormanyasya angamejatva swasa praswasa vikshepa sahabhuvaha. These 14, these are the antarayas. And these obstructions will not be there. These obstructions will not be there when you succeed in doing Ishvara Pranidhana. Tataha pratyek chetana adhigamo. And you have tataha pranava japa rupa tadartha dhyana rupa cha. By meditating and by doing chanting the Om, by remembering God, what happens is Ishvara Pranidhanat, by surrendering to the Lord, Pratyak Chetanasya Purushasya, that individual consciousness that you represent, Prakriti Vivekena, by seeing yourself as different from Prakriti, because you have Maya, Prakriti, and Purusha. Adhigamaha Sakshatkaru Bhavati, then you have self-realization. Uktanam antarayanam abhavopi bhavati ityarthaha. And all these 14 obstruction hurdles which obstruct our path in meditation are also removed. Abhyasa vairagyabhyam antaraya nibritau. Now, abhyasa and vairagya, with the help of these, in removing all these obstructions, kartavyayam abhyasad dadhyartham aha. So, in order to have abhyasa dadhyartham aha, so then there is another sloka, sutra, which is the 32nd sutra, in order to strengthen your abhyasa and vairagya, which help in removing the obstacles and to strengthen your practice. He is having another sutra, that is 32nd. Tat pratisedha artham ekatvabhyasaha. So, he's saying basically meditating. If this pratiseda, tat means what? The antaraya pratiseda. All the pratiseda, the antarayas that we discussed right now, in order to block them, those enemies, what do you need to do? Because we have discussed, this is sloka number, sutra number 32nd, 30 and 31st are those antarayas. So in order to block those 14 enemies or obstructions or hurdles, what do you do? That ekatva abhyasaha, meditating on that one, Ishvara. Tesam antarayanam pratisedhartham ekashmin kasminchid abhimate tattve abhyasa chetasaha punah punah nivesanam karyam. So in that Ishvara punah punah nivesanam, again and again you stabilize and you focus your mind back to square one in a positive way, going back to the roots of your existence and consciousness. Remember and meditate on the Om. That's what is the advice. Tatha Maitri. Then what happens is, how do you deal with other people when you wake up from meditation? Should you ignore everybody? Should you at all connect with anyone? This is some practical advice here. And I will just wind it up in 2 minutes. It's 8:30, but I'll try to quickly wind it up. Okay. Tatha Maitri Karuna Mudito Muditopekshanam Sukha Dukha Punya Punya Vishayanam Bhavanataha Chitta Prasadanam. So the next one is how to deal with others. Depending on who is the person that you're talking about, your attitude will be displayed accordingly. That's the advice. So you have a differential, proportional approach to people around you, depending on who he is. Okay. Now, Maitri Soharda Karuna Kripa. Maitri Karuna Mudita Upekshanam. So these are the 4 attitudes you will have. What will you have? Maitri. What is Maitri? Is Soharda. Now have good-heartedness. Okay, love. Karuna, Kripa, it's compassion. Mudita, Harsha, kind of elatedness happens. Upeksha, Audasinyam, indifference, stoic silence. Sukhadi sabdehi tadvantaha pratipadyante. And depending on who are those 5 people, you will have these things. If there's a person who is happy, you see, you are meditating, and the 2 children happily playing, should you shout at them? They are happy. Why do you want to spoil their happiness? So you have, what do you have? Maitri. You have Soharda. You have goodwill for them. Then what he's saying, Sarva Pranishu Sukha Sambhoga Apanneshu. All the animals who are having fun. You are a yogi, you are eating once a day. You are striving hard to get your inner realization. Meanwhile, there's a boy and a girl who are recently married, and they are on a honeymoon in the Ganges. They are taking pictures and maybe doing Facebook Live with their family members, saying, Papa, I'm here, the daughter is saying. So they are, and you're getting disturbed. You're saying, these are sansaris. Why? That's none of your business. You should wish them well and bless them. That is the advice. Maitri, Sarva Pranishu, Sukha Sambhoga Apanneshu, Sadhu Etan Mama, Mitranam Sukhatvam iti Maitrim Bhavayet. Oh my God, these are all my children, my friends. Let them be happy. Sukhitvam iti Maitrim Bhavayet. Natu isham, don't be jealous. Why? You're not interested in Vishaya Vasanas in the samsara. You are a yogi. But others who are having an ice cream or maybe laughing at each other and taking selfies, just ignore but relax and wish them well. Bless them. That is a particular thing. Dukhitesu katham nu nama esa dukha nibritihi sad iti krupam eva bhavayet na upekhyam nava harsham. Then suddenly you are meditating or you're doing your sadhana and there's a boy or a girl who are rushing for his examination and suddenly he falls or some bad thing happens to him. Well, how can this little boy or girl do well in the examination? He's so stressful. What should you do? Pray for him or her. You are a yogi, aren't you? And therefore he's saying, Katham no nama esa dikhanabhriti. How can this little boy be a little happy and smile? Why is he looking so stressful? Okay? Upameva bhavet, have compassion. Send your sympathy and your compassion, your empathy. Now upekyam, don't ignore, don't be indifferent. Don't be indifferent. Don't kind of overlook him. Nava harsham. Don't make fun of him. Don't be happy because he's sad. Punya basu punya anumodinena harsham kuryad natu vidvesam na upekhyam. And then somebody who's a punyavan vyakti is happy, he's singing and he's meditating for long hours. Oh my God, if somebody reports to you, there is this yogi who meditates for 12 hours a day, you say, really? You must be faking it. Don't do it. It will harm yourself. Look at this after it's saying this. Punya basu punya anumodinena harsham. You should be happy. Oh, really? How wonderful. So, punya anumodana harsham kurya not vidvesam, not upekhyam. Don't ignore him and don't do vidvesa. Don't be jealous of him. Apunya vasu cha odasunyam eva bhavet na anumodana navadvesham. And there is somebody who's doing dirty works. Okay, of course, he's violating some social harmony, trying to harm someone. You are there. Please oppose. That's your dharma. But on the other hand, somebody is drinking or maybe doing anything nonsense. And what should you do? No, you just ignore it. Look away from it. Don't have to waste your time. You are a spiritually inclined yogi. And therefore, you absolutely don't get into it. And udasinyam, you be stoically silent and avoid. But if you have to complain to the police, of course, there is a hotline number. You can call them up. Evam asya bhavayataha suklo dharma upajayate. If you do like this, then that sattva pradhana vritti will kind of magnify itself in you, and you have that sukla dharma emerging in you. Goodness blossoms in you. Tatasya vigata raga dvesadi malam. And therefore, you kind of overcome attachment and aversion because you are not doing dvesa in any of these things we discussed, and you are doing no raga, there is no attachment. There is only love and compassion and detachment. And therefore, chittam prasanna sat ekagrata yogyam bhavati. Then you are capable of doing this whole sampragyanta samadhi yoga. Ekagrata, that is the first hurdle. You are reaching there. Maitradi chatushtayam cha upalakshyanam abhayam sattva suddhihi ityadinam amanitvam adambhitvam ityadinam cha dharmanam. In Vedanta, there are 3-4 things which are very important. One is abhaya. You should not cause harm or fear to anyone. So if a person is taking sannyas, he has to raise his hands near the Ganges and give abhaya to all the animals. I am not harming anyone. And that's why it's much different from the tantric traditions in this and that. And tantrics are never considered sannyasis because in the Dasanami parampara, Shankaracharya parampara, you cannot do anything, any ritual, if you are trying to harm anyone, no, that you cannot do. So you say, because you are pure vegetarian, you don't harm anyone. That you're giving abhaya to the sansara because you are away from it, you are meditating on the divine. And then amanitvam, don't have any ego, and adambhitvam, I'll do this, I have the capacity. That true nonsense kind of attachment that a person has to his own ego, these are all modifications of your narcissistic self-obsession, and they are enemies in a way. And therefore, you can do dharmanang sarvesam etesam subhavasana rupatvena malina vasana nivartakatva. This is a beautiful thing. By having this amanitva, adambhitva, and then having this, what is called, sattva samsuddhi, and then also you have maitri and karuna and practicing all that. These are what? subha vasanas. These are good desires and good intentions. What he's saying is, if you have a lot of bad intentions, one way to sort of deal with them is to replace them with good intentions. It's like you have some inefficient staff in your office. How do you make the company profitable? Bring in more professionals who are good and efficient and committed. Now, bring in emotions which are positive and flush away emotions which are useless, counterproductive, are inimical to your spiritual growth. Okay, Raga Dvesha Mahasatru, Raga and Dvesha, big enemies. Be careful about them. Sarva Purusartha Pratibandhakau, and they'll block any Purusartha, whether it's Dharma, Artha, Kama, Mukhya. They'll block everything. Neither can you get money because of too much of Raga Dvesha, nor can you succeed in love. You'll be too jealous. Even if the person you love most, you suspect that fellow so much that he or she will run away from you. So therefore, Pratibandhako Mahata Prayatnena, with a lot of important effort that you do, Parihartabhya, Parihartabhyau iti etat sutrarthaha. So this sutrartha is basically saying that Raga Dvesha are two major enemies, and to defeat them, in order to widen your path towards yogic self-realization, you have to practice these good things that we discussed right now. Evam anyepi pranayamadayah, and other techniques like pranayama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, and all. Upaya chitta prasadanaya darshitaha. So in the Yoga Sutra, several other techniques have been mentioned that you can read and perfect how to make the mind peaceful. Tad etat chitta prasadanam bhagavad anugrihena dasya jatam tam prati eva etad vachanam sukhena. You know what? He sort of makes us very humble in the end by saying that particular sloka when Bhagavan says, Anayes sukhena brahma sansparsam atyantam sukham asnate. When he said this, you might have felt very good. After giving a long lecture, he's saying, this sukhena, very easily, brahma sansparsam atyantam sukham asnate. That fellow gets this sukham, atyantika sukha, without any effort. Well, it's meant for that adhikari who is here. After giving that long lecture, is saying, for these kind of people who are prasanna chitta, because there is no raga and dvesa, these are the adhikaris who will experience God without any obstruction. Are you there? We have to analyze ourselves. And if we analyze, we know how long we will take. Anyatha manaha prasama anupapattehe. Otherwise, because your mind is not peaceful, you're not going to reach there. We'll stop here because we have touched 8:40, and I'm ending the live stream, and we can have question, answer, whatever, or prayers.